In a world that seems to be greatly driven by fear-based messaging, this conversation promises to bring hope and possibility. Our guest today has turned one of what most of us would see as their biggest challenge into her greatest gift. Charlotte Caunter is the founder of Health SHEro. She's a mum of two babes and, amongst a lot of other things, I think, she's also a certified holistic cancer practitioner. Charlotte helps mamas to reclaim their health, power, and freedom by learning to use their intuition to heal holistically for themselves and their family. Charlotte, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm super excited about our conversation. We just had a little bit of a preamble before we hit record, and I've told you how much of I gave you a little bit of a fangirl moment. So
And
thank
right
you for
back at
joining
you.
us. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to our conversation. I'm glad we were able to make the time. We're on other sides of the world, and so yeah, welcome.
Thank you. And honestly, I'm so excited to even just to be in your energy as well. And I've watched a few of your podcasts, and they're brilliant. You're brilliant. Your energy
Oh,
is so infectious, and you're doing important work right now. Important work. So I'm and getting goosebumps for that. So yeah, really
oh, thank you. I really
to share the
appreciate
space
that.
with you. Yeah.
Ditto. So, obviously, the thing that we're going to be talking about today is your work, but also your story. And I've got, as I said before we hit record, another thing I said was I'm going to have a whole bunch of questions. I'm going to try and keep on topic because we could go down many rabbit holes. And I know from following you on Instagram for quite some time, we have very similar values, beliefs around our health, around our true nature as humans,
Yeah.
and the wisdom that we all carry with us. Yeah, so this is going to be a very insightful conversation. It might make some people feel uncomfortable. I'm hoping it
Yeah.
won't, but
Yeah. Well,
who knows?
I hope it does with lots of love. I hope it does with
Correct.
lots of love
Yeah.
because when we're triggered, we're being, we're being encouraged to grow, outside the box that we put
Yeah.
ourselves.
Yeah.
So even if we just question it a little bit and then just put it in the back burner and be like, nah, maybe just plant some seeds and then maybe one day I'll explore that a little bit more. Like that's okay too. But yeah, you definitely don't have to agree with anything or everything that we're saying or
Right,
doing.
exactly. Yeah. And I guess one of the things that I want to talk about later on in the piece is that freedom of choice, yeah,
Yeah.
that we all
Yeah.
have that sometimes we
Yeah.
forget.
Yeah. Yeah. We've been programmed to forget, haven't we?
Correct. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
So, do you want to start, Charlotte, by sharing your story with us? You've been very open online in your socials and on your YouTube channel with your story. So, I'd love you to take us through that and how you kind of got to what you're doing in your work today.
Yeah. So if I kind of go back to 2010. 2010, I was working in the mental health field. So I worked with kids, like basically like psych ward for children, like mental health inpatient unit for children in a couple different hospitals and the school board and a youth shelter. And I was working like 80 to 90 hours a week
Wow.
consistently. And I loved working with the kids. Like it gave me energy. I loved it. And then after, like 5, 6, 7 years, and I just had started questioning the system. Like, what are we doing here? And, kids would be coming in and then we're getting them, we're diagnosing them and we're giving them labels. We're getting them to own the labels. We're giving them medication. We're not working with family. We're not working with, schools. We're not working with, what's going on at home, diet, all these other factors. And I felt like I was beating my head against the wall, and I felt like I was part of the problem, and I was causing more harm than good to a lot of these children working in these systems. So that weighed heavy, like on my heart. And at the time, like behind the scenes, personally, I was going through a breakup. We had tried 2 years to have children. Anyways, and then long story short, I eventually ended up getting pregnant. I ended up having a miscarriage, and the relationship was over and all of that. But so a lot of grief, a lot of grief, a lot of grief with the system that I thought that I was supposed to be in and like, save the world or save the kids. And I was like, what am I doing? And then all of a sudden in my personal life, it was kind of falling apart, working crazy amount of hours. When I wasn't working, I was in the gym, like working out like crazy or playing a lot of competitive sports as well. So pushing my body to the max in terms of no sleep, still eating
Wow.
well, but sleep and working out like crazy. So it was a lot going on behind the scenes. And then all of a sudden, a few years prior to that, my mom was diagnosed with diabetes, and I went to all her appointments. And then I started doing my own research, and I was like, "Mom, we can heal this naturally." And she was like, "Oh, I don't know." And I started making her food and delivering it to her, and then I would go and pick it up at the end of the day, and all the containers were still filled with food. And I was like, "Oh, okay." So that was my first lesson that we can't force people to
Mm.
heal. And then my dad had two strokes. So I was helping him, with all of that and reading and researching. And so I had this passion for health and wellness. And I wanted to always, ever since I was a kid, I've always kind of questioned the system. And teachers, some loved me and others were like, will you shut the, F up and just sit there and, and not say anything, so I asked a lot of questions. And then I took my first holistic health course in 2010 as like all these systems I felt like were kind of crumbling around me. So I had this like basic knowledge of health. And then in 2011, I was diagnosed with cancer. And I was like, how can you be diagnosed with cancer? I was 32 years old at the time. I was fit, and I was like, I'm fit, I'm young, like this doesn't fit, any of the check boxes that I thought illness would fall under, and then all of a sudden, I went to the doctor. And they said, okay, we're going to do surgery next week, chemo, radiation, or we're going to get this ball rolling. And I was like, hold on. Like, I mean, I'm not a doctor. I don't know. But, what else can I do with my health? Do I have any other options? And they're like, no. If you want to live, then you've got to do this. And I was like, well, I do want to live, so I guess I have to, I have to do this. But hang on. I know if I get a common cold or a headache or whatever, a stomach ache, I do everything in my power to support my immune system. Here's the sickest I've ever been, although I don't feel sick, but I found this lump on my breast. I don't feel sick, and now I'm going to destroy my immune system with chemo and radiation in addition to surgery. So none of this made sense intuitively. I was like, this doesn't make sense. But family is saying, like, we want you to live, we don't want you to die. Then friends were talking about death, and I'm like, shit, I don't want to die. Like, what do I need to do? I'll do anything. And then I sat down with my doctor and I was like, well, what about diet? Like, I want to feel empowered right now. Like, what else can I do? And he said, Charlotte, diet has nothing to do with your health. I was like, oh God, like this is a man that's going to come and save me. I'm like, I'm not even a doctor, or I wasn't even a nutritionist at the time, but I was like, shit, if I know if I eat, McDonald's, I'm going to feel like a big, bag of poop. And if I eat well, I'm going to feel good. So I know it has something to do with my health, like, but so that answer, when he gave me that, I was so pissed. I was so angry because I was like, this is the man that's supposed to come and save me. I don't even trust him. And
Mm.
so that led me going down like a bunch of different rabbit holes, and dove into health and nutrition. Now, 3 months after my original diagnosis, my best friend was diagnosed with cancer. And she ended up passing away when we were 34.
Oh,
So
wow.
2 years after, yeah, our original diagnosis. And it was a blessing because we got to, she was like a sister to me, like, and I'm still really close with her family. But we lay in bed together, we go to appointments together. So it was beautiful in that sense. And we got to spend all this, amazing quality time. But at the time when she passed, that was probably the saddest I had ever been. And I was filled with grief and filled with so much anger, resentment, confusion. Like, I was like, who do I trust? Because all these people in the white coat, I was told to trust blindly. And now I'm like, I don't even know who to trust. And it's not like I can talk to about friends or family because they're not seeing the same picture that I'm seeing right now. So it was really challenging. So I ended up leaving my career in mental health, and I'm in just outside of Toronto, but I ended up going down to the States, and I became a raw food chef and a health and nutrition consultant, whatever that means, but studied health and nutrition, and then dove in just so I could dive into my own healing because I was like, I never want to go through that again. And once I had finished treatment, They told me to go on medication for 5 years because my cancer was estrogen based. Now, back in 2011, when I was diving into this medication was called tamoxifen, and that's it's probably like the number one drug that they push on estrogen based breast cancers. So I took it. So I was like, okay, well, let me take it. So I took it, but then I dove in and started taking, diving into the big rabbit hole behind this medication. And this medication was made by a company called AstraZeneca, which we now know because of 2020, but I didn't know back in the day, So AstraZeneca and this company makes tamoxifen. Now, AstraZeneca makes the number one herbicide, fungicide, insecticide that causes estrogen-based cancers,
Oh
and it's
my.
banned in Europe for that reason. So it's like, how do I give my body, my health, my life over to a company that's got their money in the treatment, in the cause and in the solution? That made
Wow.
no sense to me. So when I brought this up to my doctor, he was like, "Oh my God, here we go." And he's like, can you even read like research papers?" And I was like, "Well, I can read." Let's start with that. And I'm trying to make a joke and kind of lighten it up, and he was angry because, and I get it. It wasn't like I was trying to upset him, but I was genuinely trying to ask questions. And he was getting ready to retire, and I was questioning his whole career. I mean,
Mm,
I was questioning his whole purpose up into this,
mm,
like up into this point. So, I mean, that is hard. That is hard to hear. And, he came in and he literally threw papers at me. And again, he was angry because he's trying to save my life. In his mind, he was trying to save my life, and so was I, And so once I, explained my situation, I stopped taking that medication and continued like changing my life. I mean, I moved, I changed my career, I changed all my diet and lifestyle, and then things were, amazing. I was, coaching for a long period of time, helping so many beautiful souls. And then 2020 happened. And, I mean, we all know like the world turned upside down. And during this time, right from the beginning, only because of the rabbit holes I had gone down, a
mm.
decade earlier, I was like, this is not how we heal. This is not how we heal. And I didn't, buy into. At first, I was like, what is happening? Is this the black, plague? And I was really kind of getting drawn into it. And then I was like, no, this is. Anyways, I don't know how much we can talk about it because I know I'm being very careful on that.
Yes, you have to be very general, don't you?
Yes, yes, but I questioned a lot of things,
Mm,
and I didn't. I chose not to wear a mask. I chose not to get the shot, and I'm totally open with. However, we've got to do what allows us to make us, whatever we feel safe doing. That's what we've got to do, and for me, that's what I felt safe doing. But like going to the grocery store felt like, I mean, I've never been in war, and not to minimize that, but that's what it felt like. It felt like a battleground every time I went out without a mask, and sometimes people would yell and scream or throw masks or whatever, and I would
wow.
stay calm, very calm, because I always had my kids with me that
Mm,
were young at the time. They're 8 and 9 now, so close to yours, I
yeah.
think, right? Yeah, and then my dad ended up getting diagnosed with cancer at that time. And he did surgery, chemo. And I said, Dad, I've been studying cancer and I've taken every cancer course you can imagine. Like, I've got you. And he was like, Charlotte, I just need to listen to my doctors because that's the only way that I'm going to live. And I was like, okay, Dad, whatever makes you feel safe, I'm going to honor and respect your journey. And became his like primary caregiver and, grocery shopping and taking him to all his appointments. And then, I was homeschooling my kids and the business was expanding. And then once Dad had finished treatment, he was considered all clear, and the doctor insisted that he ended up getting his shots.
Uh,
And about a month after his second one, he was diagnosed with heart cancer. And at that point, in 11 years of studying cancer, I've never heard of anybody getting diagnosed with heart cancer before, like ever. And he ended up passing away. And then 2 weeks later, my cancer had come back.
oh, wow.
Yeah, and it was stress. I mean, I created
Mm,
the perfect holistic storm. Mentally, emotionally, physically, environmentally, and spiritually. I was living in a very low vibrational state, and really in fear and anger and resentment. Like, is this how our world is going? Like, what is happening? This is not the way to do it. And there was a lot of turmoil and a lot of dis-ease in my body. And then the cancer came back. And this time I was like, I know what I need to do. And I felt extremely confident. Fear still pops up and I
mm.
still need to have protocols in place, but I knew I knew that I was going to heal naturally this time and heal on my own terms. And that's what I've been doing. And I've completely transformed my health in the last 2 years. And that pretty much takes us up to the present moment.
Wow. And you basically said a whole bunch of things that could
I did.
send us down one of those rabbit holes. But we'll try and stay on topic. So what was I think? Okay. Okay. I'm just kind of thinking about where to start. So you've talked about your experience with your treatment the first time, and then you've lived a decade or more
Mhm.
without cancer. Did you? And I've seen you talk about. So I'll just keep this relatively high level at the moment, but I've seen you in your socials talk about like the to scan or not to scan, like when someone, I guess, is going to check to see whether they are healing and whether the protocols are being effective. Yeah, can you talk us a little bit about that? And like, yeah, maybe we'll go from there. I'm just curious,
Yeah.
like, how did you know the first time that it was that you were healed, and how did you know that it had come back, and like, what were the differences in the choices that you made?
Yeah, great question. So, I mean, the first time I found my own lump, I
Mm,
actually had an eye injury. I was playing baseball and the ball took a funny bounce and I broke my orbital floor. So I had to lay
wow.
flat on my back for the swelling to go down, for my eye not to move. And then I had to have surgery. So during that month of me, and this is like me working, 80, 90 hours a week, like go, 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 go. And then all of a sudden it was like everything stopped and lay down flat. So for me to be running from my emotions, for so many
Ah,
years, all of a sudden to be like sit still, I was like, this is torture, torture.
wow.
But then when I was on my laptop or something at the time, and then an ad popped up, and it said, self-examinations. I was like, oh, I've never done a self-examination before, and I found the lump. So
Wow.
I personally found it, and then went into the hospital, and then I mean, the moment you go in there, you're sucked into the system pretty quickly, and then it's very, very fast paced, like all the treatments. Um, and so the first time I did an integrative approach. So I did a surgery, chemo, and radiation. And then I also did like loads of natural things in addition to that. Even though the doctor said, don't change your diet, don't do this, don't do that. I mean, I changed everything, and listened to my intuition because those were things that I felt very empowered that I could control.
Mm.
And then the second time, I found the lump as well. I could feel it right away, and I was like, "Ooh, okay, all right, here we go." And went to the hospital, and then I had an ultrasound done, so they saw it on the ultrasound, and then they did a biopsy, which I definitely regret getting, because when you have a lump, it's like it's pulling all the damaged cells, and they're putting it in a protective shell. So it's almost like hoarding bees and putting it in a protective hive. So the moment you go in and start poking, now all
Mm.
of a sudden things can come up, of that protective shell. So we've got to form another protective shell to kind of like scoop it all up. So it can delay the healing process a little bit. Uh, and so the scans, many of the scans, if we're talking mammograms, I mean, have a lot of radiation. And I always joke around, like if you've ever had one, I mean, they literally, you're putting your breast, like you're lifting your breast up, you're putting it on a table, and they are like pushing it with such force on all angles. And I'm like, only a man, like, and I love men, but only a man kind of like invented this machine for women.
Right?
No woman would have ever made this machine, like ever. And we can damage tissue, we can damage like cells, even just doing, and never mind the radiation,
Mm.
just the impact alone. Like, can you imagine if men put their testicles up on there? You know what I mean? It wouldn't happen. It wouldn't happen. But ladies were like, oh, okay, we'll follow directions and do it. But I'm making a joke of it, but I just want us to like really think
Well,
about it.
I think
Like
that mammograms have
make
actually been banned in some countries, haven't
yeah,
they?
yeah.
Because
I,
they
I
can actually
I know they've been
cause, yeah,
oh yeah, they can and they do cause, yeah, they can
yeah,
cause cancer.
they've actually been banned in some countries. Mm.
Yes, and and then other things. And especially when you think about even just technology in general. I mean,
Mm,
iPhone. I have an iPhone, but
EMFs.
I come out, yeah, every year, whatever company it is, they come out with new technology
Mm,
every single year. In the hospitals, many of the technology has not changed since the 40s or 50s.
yeah.
Neither has like the treatment, so it's like all this money, all the running for the cures, all of this, and we're still giving like toxic treatments, we're still giving
Mm,
toxic scans as well, like even CT scans, or like probably one of the safest scans that we can do is MRI.
okay.
Um, but even with MRI, a lot of times they'll inject you with radioactive dye. But just plain MRI, it's magnetic, so there's no radiation, so you're better
Okay.
there. But you're in, if you've got any claustrophobic issues, you're laying, flat. You put your, round breasts in two square boxes. you know, and again, like it's important to kind of know these things. Because it's like, does it make sense? Like, make it make sense, you know?
Does it make
Um,
sense? But also, what kind of frame of mind does all of that put you in? Like, where you're basically being treated like an object.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
that can happen, I think, in a medical system anyway, right? Because they're so used to just dealing with people all the time, like they forget that kind of emotional connection that, like, you can feel quite lost when you're the person receiving the treatment. But like to be
yeah,
put into basically, yeah, like, oh well, let's just put your boobs in a box, or
yeah, yeah. And
and
later,
you're like, what do you mean? Yeah, like
yeah,
fuck.
yeah. No, it really. I mean, yeah. When you think about it, it really doesn't make sense, But there are, but this is why, although I'm kind of laughing, I'm laughing at with regards to my own personal
Yeah,
journey.
yeah,
Some people are like, if I don't scan, and there's other ways, like you can do thermography. Thermography is brilliant as well. I mean, you go in there and you basically take off your clothes and they're taking pictures of you. So the worst case scenario, you're cold, but
yeah.
there's no harm done, which is great. So MRIs and ultrasounds, are definitely better than CTs or mammograms, but ultrasound or MRIs or thermography is what I would recommend. But if you're somebody, this is even in my program, the Sacred Healers program, I'm always teaching people how to tune in. Like, is it in my highest good and the highest good of all involved for me to do this scan? And then I honor the question. But we don't just start with the heavy, the
Mm,
heavy questions, the big, I would say, for you, like something that, that I always kind of do. I'm just grabbing paper here, but I'll get my clients to grab paper, like two pieces of paper the same size, and I put like, yes on one or y on one and then no on the other. And then we
hmm.
fold them up and mix them so you don't know which one's which. This is just an intuitive
Yeah.
exercise that you can do. And then you can, hold it over your heart. And then, for you, Nadine, you can say, is my first name Nadine? And then you just breathe in. And for me, I'll try and pull the energy from my feet and I kind of pull it all through my body and I try and pull it like straight through the crown of my head. So, and then if it's not the answer, sometimes it gets stuck like in my stomach or in my chest, and it's like I can't pull this energy up. And then I know this isn't the answer. And the other ones when I feel like it's more of a yes, the answer will come, like the energy will come straight through. But this is just, I mean, that's for me, but it could be different for you. Like my kids, sometimes it goes to their elbow for a no, and then their heart to a yes. So it could be different. But what's really important is that when you're breathing, is just notice the sensations in your body,
Mm.
just bringing awareness back into your body. But this is a really like super easy and fun thing that you can do and practice like with yourself and with the kids. Like, what city do we live in? How old am I? Like, am I this age, or do I live in this city, or is this my first name? Is this my last name? Like, practice with things that so you
Mm.
start to really, really get good at it and feel more comfortable, and you start to learn to trust yourself. Because along this healing journey, fear is going to pop up. Curveballs will pop up because healing is not linear. It's like, oh my God, I'm
Mm.
healed. Oh my God, I'm dying. Oh my God, I'm healed again. Like, oh, I'm going backwards. So it's constantly kind of up and down during this lifelong healing journey. So when we're in those lows, we really have to rely on us, and bring the power back to us. And one of the ways we can do that is through intuition. So we stop blindly giving our power away to the experts. Even me, like I always ask with my clients, I always ask them, have you tuned in first? Tune in first and see what you get. Then let's tune in together. And then we can see, what's kind of best for you. But so for somebody that's, highly anxious and they say, I need to know, I just need to know, I need to know what the baseline is or where I am now. For somebody like that, they would need to scan. Scanning would be in their highest interest. And if for somebody else like myself, who probably would have trouble sleeping, knowing that I'm about to go into war or like battle in a few days, if I have to go to the hospital or something like that, that's very draining and very, very heavy for me as well. So I'll have protocols before I go in. If I go to see a doctor or something, I'm putting protective shell around me, or I'll clean up my energy even afterwards, So I'll have protocols before and after, but really for the individual. It's not like a one stop shop, but like the hospital that you were mentioning, almost like a factory, right? You like jump on the belt. You're like jump off for chemo and jump back on and jump off for radiation or whatever.
Yeah, and it is quite hard, isn't it? When you go in and you decline, like you actually, you kind of want, you, I guess there's a need for the support to a degree but when you decline certain treatments, when I was pregnant, I was 42, nearly 42, my second baby. And with both babies, I declined the glucose test.
Well done.
And oh my God, I was given a really hard time about it. Like, you're high risk. Why, why? And I was like, well, I don't eat sugar. So it just doesn't it's just not logical for me to like, of course my body's going to respond to it. Like, I don't think I need it. And like, but they were really, really pushy. So I can't even begin to imagine how you would feel when, if you find a lump in your breast as you did. And then like you say, it's like going to war. We're not taught to trust that we have the capability to heal. But also that kind of sense of I'm pretty sure I would be feeling like I want to get rid of it. Like I want to act fast. What do I need to do? So like allowing your clients to take that step back, to take a breath, take a moment, and like actually make some more conscious decisions rather than just being pulled along by the system. How do you do that when do people come to you? When do your clients come to you? Is it like as a sacred healer, are you healing all the time, or your clients have already found out that they've got cancer? Have they like, oh, I've just given you about 700 questions in one. Like, how do you, okay, scenario. It's like that scenario of like, I've just found a lump. I go to my doctor. The doctor sends me into the system, and they're starting to say, we need to do the biopsy. We need to do the scan. You need to have this treatment. And like basically your first experience, right?
Yeah.
At what point does someone come to you instead of getting sucked into that vortex?
Yeah. So my clients like vary. So some of them have lost parents to cancer, and
Okay.
and the fear is so real. They're like, well, I'll do anything because I'm a parent and I'll do anything, to heal. Some are like, I've had digestive issues for a while now, or I've had pain for a while now, like chronic dis-ease in the body. So they're like, I just want to get to the root cause. And I've tried, and many of my clients have gone the conventional route, have not gotten the answers that they want, that have gone even the naturopathic route and not getting the answers they want, because even the conventional and the naturopathic both use the same approach. It's like a reactive physical healing solution. So, with the conventional world, it's like, you get sick and then it's usually, medication. In the cancer world, it's surgery, chemo, radiation, medication. But even in the naturopathic world, it's still like IVs or supplements or diet, oxygen, whatever that is. So oxygen therapy. So it's still like physical base. And
Mm,
with me, like where I start, it's like first things first is that I need to educate, because again, we're not taught this in school, we're not taught this by the media, we're not taught this by the medical system, because they're not even taught. And there's so many beautiful souls that work in the hospitals that, that are doctors that really genuinely care for the patients, and they want the best for them. So it's not like I hate the system, and I don't have any anger or resentment towards the system,
mm,
but it's not enough. If you're dealing with anything acute, you break your arm, or you're giving birth and you need an emergency C-section, then yes, like there is a time and place for medication and the hospital. But if we're dealing with anything chronic, then the hospital isn't enough. We have to make changes holistically. And just like, I mean, cancer, but any dis-ease in the body, it happens first and foremost with thoughts. It's like we
okay.
think negative thoughts, and a lot of times we get stuck in this loop. It's like, the infinity symbol.
Mm,
It's like we get stuck in this loop, and these patterns that we keep playing over and over again. So if something happens, we replay the past and we expect the future to be that past programming. So the first thing that I do when somebody comes in, whether they're just going the prevention route or actively healing something, or even, healing cancer, whatever that range is, the first thing I do is educate them, because, just like, I guess it's gone now. I don't think you can see. You can see like a little bit
oh
of
yeah,
purple.
yep.
Anyways, in August, it sliced my hand. I was, anyways, mowing. It
Oh,
caught. It had a bad cut, deep cut on both my fingers, and had to wear bandages for a few weeks because it was open and whatever. I didn't think I didn't think like I should go see a doctor. I didn't
mm,
think what supplements I should change my diet. I should change this. I changed it. Just healed. It just healed on its own. Our body is always, 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 always in a state of healing or adapting. We have been programmed to think that our body is always acting against us. So when we have pain, we're like, shit, I've done something wrong. I shouldn't have eaten something, or, it's like, what's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? That's where our mind goes. But if we, flip the script and we think, what is my body healing? Or this is a healing response, like even just the common cold. If our nose is running, if we're coughing up mucus, this is detoxing, right? We can only detox, with sorry, let me just back up for a second. The only way for us to get sick is toxicity and deficiency. Toxicity and deficiency. And we tend to think physical because of, again, the conventional world or even the naturopathic world. But it's not, it's mentally, emotionally, physically, environmentally, and spiritually toxicity, mental
mm,
toxic thoughts, toxic emotions, toxic environmental, the toxins, and then spiritually living too much in fear. And when we're all fed a diet of fear with everything that we're seeing in the media and the
yeah.
news and everything we have access to. We have worldwide news at our fingertips every second. So anytime, before growing up, you and I, we would watch the 6 o'clock news, or, the 10
Yeah,
o'clock or
if we
11.
were made to.
If we were made to, that's it. Otherwise, it was out of sight, out of
Yeah.
mind, and we were living our best lives, right? Now we've got the news on our phone at our fingertips all over the world. So it is really overwhelming. So it's like all of a sudden I check, I don't know, the weather, and something pops up and I see war or death or whatever. And I'm like, so it's like I just
Mm,
saw a bear. I walked around the corner and I saw a bear. I'm like, so now I've got all this pent up energy. And now I'm like swallowing it into my body, right? So I've got all this energy. Now I'm swallowing it into my body, and I'm not getting it out in healthy ways. So when we store these negative thoughts in our bodies, we start to feel negative thoughts. And then eventually, because we're not acknowledging our emotions or processing them, or getting them out in healthy ways, now our body starts communicating out of love, not
mm,
out of hate, not because we're being punished, we're bad, or we did something wrong. It's just helping us out, like, hey, you've got a little bit too much toxins here. Let's get this out in healthy ways. So first things first is I really want to help educate people on how we get sick, why we get sick, and how we can heal using a holistic approach. So when somebody comes in, it's first that education piece, like really
mm,
understanding how we heal. If it's the cancer, I educate the cancer piece as well. Um, and just quickly, with cancer, if I have, a lump on my shoulder, and say I'm a car. the lump represents the check engine light. So the
Mm.
check engine light is blinking. So if I come in with surgery and I'm pulling I pulled the lump out, and then I'm like, oh, let me pour poison on the car, chemo, let me burn where that check engine light was, radiation. And then I'd be like, good, you're good. Your car's fixed now. Like I would be the worst mechanic, the worst mechanic. Because my car's the system, it's a systemic issue. It's not just a localized issue, it's a systemic issue. So we want to clean up the system. But first things first, we start with the mind, we build belief. I will not even, I won't work with anybody that does not believe they can heal, because I know how quickly, and I've seen how quickly, I mean, health can turn around when the belief isn't there. So first things first is
Mm.
like educating, building up the belief, and then we start implementing protocols. And usually the first place people want to start is physical protocols, which is amazing. Then we always add in the other protocols. And then with my program, it's always like choose your own adventure. I give like lists of protocols of things that we can do, and we come up with them together. But I always get the person involved, because one, like intuitively, if I give you a list of 10, for you, maybe two would be highlighted. And I'm like, okay, so intuitively you're drawn to those two. Let's do those two. Because our highest self, we know we have this ancient wisdom within us. We've been taught that. I'm not super religious, but I'm very spiritual. But we've been taught that God is like, above us and like sitting on a cloud judging us. And I feel like we are one,
Mm.
and yeah, and we've got that universal energy within us, like God energy is within us. So we can tap into that anytime that we want. And we have been, pinned into a very small box to like live in fear. And we are far more powerful than we've ever been led to believe. And when we start implementing these protocols, like I have seen, yeah. So I mean, even one of my clients right now is almost cancer free after, I think we're at 4 weeks, maybe 5 weeks now, and he's almost, cancer free. It's just it's not me. It's not me. It's not my protocols. Like it has nothing to do with me. I'm holding like the frequency, and clients are meeting it. But it has nothing to do with me.
Amazing.
But that's where I would start:
Yeah.
education, belief, and then holistic healing protocols.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. And like you said, it's really shifting your beliefs, isn't it? Like, because there would be a whole bunch of doubt that would start to come up. So
Yeah.
you had your second, you found a second lump
Yeah.
around 2020,
Yep. Yeah.
and you you said you had the biopsy and you chose to. The reason I'm coming back to this is not is because you've had your own live. You are living this at you
Yeah.
teach it, but you're not just some random person who's like teaching people to heal naturally. You're in it, you're doing it, and you're like proof that this could happen. And I've got some other examples that I've seen on online in quite recent times. But so you said you regretted the biopsy, but post biopsy you decided to just go for it, like you and not have any other treatment apart from healing holistically. So you obviously had a whole bunch of protocols that you followed. How did you know if you decided not to do scanning and all of the other things that you've said that the medical system will generally recommend? How did you know when you were
Yeah.
getting better? Was it a feeling?
Yeah, great question. It's funny. I remember the first time somebody told me that I could clean my windows using vinegar and water. And I was like, get the F out of here. You can't clean windows with vinegar and water. Like you need blue stuff, And I did. Half a cup of vinegar, half a cup of water, and about 20 drops of lemon essential oil. And I cleaned my windows, and it worked. Like I was like, no streaks, no nothing. That blew my mind. So it's not like I just jumped from, all like allopathic or, all conventional. And then I was like, oh, I have cancer. Now I'm going to heal
Mm,
naturally. Like
yeah.
That's heavy. And people do that, but that's like, whoa, like that's really, really heavy because it's like all of a sudden I haven't really trusted myself up to this point,
Uh,
and now I'm gonna trust it when I'm like the scariest I've ever been with dying. So that's really challenging. So I remember even just starting with windows, and then I remember when my son, I was taking them to the doctors, when they're first born, and every time I went, they were like, your kids are too small. I said, well, my kids are half Asian. Like, what are the averages? Are they just a bunch of like big white dudes? Like my kids are probably not gonna line up with them. So I was, just again, just questioning the system. And I remember taking him once when because I brought him to daycare, and lots of colds and sicknesses and whatever, and he had a chest infection, and the doctor was like, "Oh, here, just give him this puffer." And I was like, "Wait a minute, I've seen this puffer when I was like a teenager," and it's like, "Can adults take it?" They're like, "Oh yeah, if you get sick, you can take it too, Charlotte." And I was like, "Hang on," I'm like. So my 1-year-old can take the same amount of steroids as my big lungs as his little lungs can. Like, so it's like throwing, if I take a cup of salt and pour it into my smoothie, or I take half a cup of salt and put it into my bathtub, the
mm,
toxicity is going to be different. You know what I mean? So
mm,
when they said that, I was like, oh, like absolutely not. Keep your prescription. I'm not giving him that. And I was like putting essential oils on and detox baths and, anyways, lots of cuddling and, nursing and, all that stuff. And he got better. And I was like, whoa, like I've been taught my whole life, if you have a chest infection or asthma or bronchitis, like it can get serious really quickly and you don't want it. And I was like, it got better really easy. I'm like, huh, okay. So I started kind of building up with those kind of things, right?
mm.
And then and then as you start practicing, you start to kind of feel and I would say one of the best practices that I think that I highly recommend everybody do is meditating.
Okay.
Meditating daily. I mean, I hated it. I remember the first time I did it for 10 minutes and I was like, that was the worst 10 minutes of my life. Do you know how many things I could have done in those 10 minutes? Like that was useless. Like, what, please don't, ask me to meditate again. And that was, I don't know, 20 years ago or something. And I started with like 5 minutes and you're just sitting there thinking about your to-do list. And somebody suggested guided, meditation. So I was listening to guided meditations and love that. And I would listen to it, for 10 minutes and 10 minutes, the first 7 minutes, I was thinking my to-do list. And then 3 was like heaven. So I was like, well, let me
Mm,
go a little bit longer. So then it was like, again, 10 minutes to-do list and then distraction and noises. And then it was like 5 minutes of heaven. So I just kept extending it, extending it. And when you get to those sweet spots, like now I can go deep pretty quickly because I've practiced, meditating like 1 to 2 hours a day for the first year after getting diagnosed. But then now I do it about, I don't know, half an hour to an hour every day. But when you're meditating, you get a lot of downloads, you get a lot of images. I mean, you get a lot of, you'll start to learn a lot of things. And I know it sounds woo woo and I know it sounds crazy, but if you practice it and you try it, I mean, it's crazy exciting what can happen. So that's one the thing that I would definitely suggest doing is meditation because it will really get you to tune into your body and you're very aware of all the sensations and where your energy is going. And then another way, like things like I had major digestive issues like H. pylori, pain, like in between, like, because I was holding all my stress in my stomach, watching my dad pass. So I, you know,
mm.
uh, so I couldn't eat. And even when I wasn't eating, it would hurt. So all of a sudden my stomach was amazing. And I was like, oh, okay, that's great. I was sleeping better. Weight was coming off, like not crazy, like I'm losing weight, but I was active, hiking every day and working out and eating, cleaner and whatnot. So weight started coming off. I started to feel better. Cracks on my heels started to go away. But it wasn't at first. I mean, at first, when you're detoxing, it's rough, man. It's rough. I was like breaking out in acne, and I'm like,
Mm.
what is all this acne? I'm like, okay, toxins will look for like the quickest exit point. So it's looking for your skin. It's looking for, again, nose, ears, mouth. I mean, I remember at one point breaking out in a full body rash. So it's like you start to feel better. It's like, oh, cracks are going, digestion's great. And then it's like, boom, full body rash. And I'm like, oh my God, is this like, am I going backwards? Am I going forwards? Like, what's happening? But you start to see little signs like throughout the way. And as I'm doing it, like whenever fear pops up, I have my fear like protocols in place where I'm building back up my belief. So anytime I kind of veer off, I'm like right back in the zone. But I mean, that's really what you're doing. You're seeing so many like subtle changes where you're feeling better, you have more energy. Like during those 2 years in COVID, I stopped going to the gym, I stopped working out. So I was gaining like lots of weight. Like I think I was at one point like 220, like the heaviest I've ever been ever in my life. Um, so even just losing that, so you'll start to see a lot of like physical progress. But again, healing isn't linear. So when you're
Mm.
detoxing, your symptoms can be all over the place. And even mine, like my lump got like bigger before it got better as
Oh,
well.
wow.
So even that was like frightening. And because I've studied it and I know all these things, it's like, nope, this is good. This is good. So when I broke out the rash, I was like, oh, this is great. Like I was kind of geeking out over my symptoms. And then after a few days, you're like, okay, I'm over this now. I don't want to geek out on this. Like it can go now, you know? But you manage the symptoms, but you'll see many positive signs like throughout
Mm.
your journey. Sleeping
Wow.
better, less pain, no more back pain. Like my back was being thrown out quite frequently. And, now I feel stronger than ever. I mean, I'm almost 50 and I can keep up with my kids and, go hiking and run with them. And I still play sports. And yeah, I'm feeling so much better now.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit more to the emotional side of things? Because I feel like I'm totally with you with the toxicity stuff, and that the environment is a big factor. Like
Yeah.
I've met people in my life who've lived in very they've lived in India and then came back and had a very rare form of testicular cancer, like within months of living in this place where it's really high, because of the pollution and the industry there. So
Yeah.
that's a massive part of it, and we're exposed to so much more of that. I, I have to say that sometimes I think even the medical profession can discount those things, but there's toxicity in our food as well. But that emotional stuff, I really feel like that plays, and you've obviously touched on that a lot, that plays a massive part. I came across Louise Hay, and I've talked about this a little bit in my podcasts previously, but when I was in my sort of mid to late 20s, and she's the perfect example, right, of healing cancer naturally. And I guess over the years, I've become much more aware of how that all works. And we've got people like Bruce Lipton, we've got Joe Dispenza. They're all talking about that metaphysical, and how our thoughts control our physical, like can have a massive impact on our physical symptoms and our emotions. And you've talked about this from your own experience, like the amount of pressure you were under in your work, the second time when your dad passed away. And so can you talk, could you tell us a little bit more about that? And also like different, oh, have you got, what book's that? Is that your book? Oh, that's
No.
Louise Hay.
I feel like every household needs this book.
Yes, I
Every household
totally
needs
agree.
it's not, you don't have to read it front to back. It's just a reference book.
Reference.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
you just look at like the body parts or
Mm,
an ailment or an illness or a disease or whatever you're looking at, and then it will tell you what emotions you're holding, and then it'll say like an affirmation.
mm,
But I really believe the root cause of all disease is our thoughts.
yeah.
And I remember the first time I heard that, I was so pissed, Nadine. I was like, F that. I didn't think about this. I didn't, I was like, there's no way. There's no way. But if you look up cancer, it's anger, resentment, grief. And I can say like both times I created the perfect storm mentally, emotionally, physically, environmentally, and spiritually. Both times I created like the perfect storm. And the conventional world does not get rid of stem cells. So it will, again, remove the lump, but it's not getting rid of the cancer stem cells. And if we want to get rid of the cancer stem cells, we want to make sure there's loads of oxygen in our body. Our body is more alkaline, and we want to increase, hydration and movement and, and all that physically. But behind the scenes, we need to look at the emotions. I mean, I remember, like I remember learning about this, going, I don't know, man, that's pretty woo-woo. It's pretty out there. I'm not too sure if I'm buying into this. And I remember doing vision boards with my husband. We were doing vision boards, and I was getting so excited. I was like, oh, this is good. This is our lives are going to be so amazing. Like, are you ready? Like, this is crazy. This is so good. And then I was like, oh, I'm going to bring it up to my room because we were doing it outside. And anyways, brought it up to the room. And as I'm walking, and I'm like, oh shit, how's this going to happen? Okay, well, like, when's this going to
Yeah.
happen?
Yeah.
What move should I do first, though? And this is what I'm thinking. From all of a sudden excitement, worrying all the way to, to go upstairs. And on the way, I stubbed my toe so hard that I thought I ripped my pinky toe off. And I was like, just tell me it's still there. Just tell me it's there. I thought it was gone. So I looked up toes. So when you bump an elbow or your hand or whatever, look it up. So I looked up toes, and it was let me look it up and read it word for word so I don't say it. But it's all about stop worrying about the minor details of the future. Represents the minor details of the future. So I was like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what I was doing. So I when I bumped, like I said, like when I bump an elbow, I'm reading it and I'm like, oh my gosh, like right then and there, that's exactly what I was feeling. So I keep this out like on my desk, and I'll even say to the kids if they stub a toe or bump an elbow in their hand or whatever, hey, go look that up. Let's go look and see what that is, and let's see if it resonates with us or not. Because I want my kids to clear out that emotion as quickly as it kind of comes in. And that's why tantrums are a good thing.
Mm.
Like to get it out, right? So when we have that like fearful bear energy that we're storing in our body, we need to get that out in healthy ways.
Mm.
So journaling, talking, setting the intention that you're going to get it out as you're walking by yourself, going for a walk. Meditation, help please remove that, or even just writing down your fear. But even it's like whatever you set the intention to like get that energy out. I remember the first time I went to I went to a retreat, and they said, "Oh, we're going to do a tantrum," and I was like, "Oh, like I don't really feel that angry." But all right, sure. This is right after cancer treatment, and they said, okay, here's some gloves and a bat and a pillow. And I was like, gloves? What do we need gloves for? They're like, oh, we're just going to be batting. I'm like, yeah, but yeah, it's fine. It's a plastic bat. Like, we'll be okay. She's like, we're going to be doing it for 4 hours. And I was like, 4 hours? And I was like, I'm not even angry. And the guy behind me was like, die, mother, da, da, da. And I was like, oh, and then I'm like, I'm getting this energy out. But think about it, man, like from birth, like, I mean, even being put into school where we're not doing what we want to do. There's a sense of injustice. We're under fluorescent light. I mean, your kids are homeschooled now,
Mm.
and my kids are back in the system, but like sitting under fluorescent lighting with no, being forced to study things that we don't even care about, that a lot of things are not even relevant, or even, being raised by parents that are unhealed as well, and all the things that we're getting to. So, whenever I'm working with my clients, whatever the triggers are, this is what I was saying at the beginning. If we're triggered, it's a good thing. It's
Mm.
really a good thing. It's if you're getting pissed or you're getting angry about anything, okay, that's good. And then we have protocols on how to, get that out in healthy ways. But it's like, what's behind the anger? Because anger is a secondary emotion. So we've got to feel something first. And usually it's like sadness, a sense of injustice or grief. So we want to get to that root cause. So we're like, okay, so when we do some protocols like now to help get that energy out. And then we're like, when was the first time that you remember feeling this way? And intuitively, every single person knows. And they always think, oh, I'm not going to know. I'm like, just close your eyes and think about it. And they always come back and they'll say, oh, God, when I was 7 years old, this happened or that happened. And it's not like, I'm not saying, everybody's got like this big abusive story. It could be something so little. It could be like, oh, this teacher, I bought cookies for the teacher, and the teacher said, no, you can't, the cookies are
Mm.
broken. Want to give, and that was enough to kind of hold in where you're feeling the sense of a rejection. So anytime that you're rejected, you're getting that trigger. That it's like having when the teacher said no, this is your button. So anybody comes and says, no, I don't want to play with you. It's like, boom, we're hitting the button. And then throughout the years, it's like the button
Mm.
keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So it becomes, very little. Somebody cuts you off and you're like, screaming and yelling at them. And it has nothing to do with that person. It really kind of goes back to a series of events.
Right.
But once you find out what that button is and you remove it, it can be gone within seconds. Like really, healing can happen that quick. And when we shift our thoughts, when we're open to new possibilities, when we're shifting our energy, now our physical matter starts to shift. But our physical matter cannot shift without, without our mind. And if you've ever read the book or seen the chart, Power versus Force by
I haven't seen
Dr.
it.
Calkin.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a level of consciousness. So at the bottom, the lowest frequency is shame,
Ah,
guilt,
yes.
fear,
Yeah.
grief, and all that, right? And we're fed a diet of that. And
Mm,
when we're in that, we experience inaction. So we don't even take any action. Um, and then as we raise our frequency, we can move up into anger. And when we're in anger, we're still doing like hyperactivity. So it's like, oh, my house is a mess. Like, okay, F this, I'm going to clean my whole house. And you clean your whole house. And then by the end, 5 hours later, you're exhausted, you're tired and drained, but you completed your goal. So when we're in a low vibrational state, like things move very slowly and we're getting impatient. And
mm.
now we're feeling it in our body, and our body's producing unwanted symptoms right now because we're pissed. We're like, why are we not getting to where we want to go? But then as you raise your frequency, and probably the most important step is courage, doing something or thinking something outside the box or taking action. Now you start moving into happiness and joy. And then when you start again, you keep continuously work on yourselves, and you work, what lights you up. Medicine is not just in the doctor's office. It's not just with coaching. Medicine is like, what brings you joy? What are your hobbies? What do you love to do? What did you do as a kid? Like, do that more often. We need energy to heal. So we need to get that good energy from other places. And when we're operating in a state of like feeling peace, peace is like, that's ease. Peace is completely different frequency than cancer, like anger,
Mm.
resentment. It's like, which one are you going to plug into? You can't plug into both. Cancer cannot exist in joy and peace and enlightenment, right? And even in acceptance, it cannot exist there. It can only exist in a low vibrational state. So the longer that you're staying in a high frequency state, this is why I do holistic and not just physical, mental, emotional, physical, environmental, and spiritual. And when we're operating at a higher state, dis-ease cannot exist there. It can't. And that's where people like you had mentioned, like Joe Dispenza, healed his back, broken
Mm.
in 3 different spots, healed it just by meditating. Louise Hayes, again, like healed it naturally. I mean, there's thousands of examples, but many of these examples are blocked on Google,
Yes.
are blocked,
Yes.
on Facebook, on blocked on Instagram. I mean, even in Canada here, we do a run every September for the Terry Fox run. Terry Fox was a young man, beautiful soul that had cancer. He had his leg amputated because of the cancer, and he wanted to run across Canada. And he passed away halfway through. And so now all the kids in the school run for him, which sounds beautiful. But what are we programming the kids?
Mm.
Like every year in September, every child that comes into that school, cancer equals death. And the only option that we can do is surgery, chemo, and radiation.
Mm.
Every single child that goes into the school board learns about him. Every year they run for him. Imagine if they ran for somebody that healed naturally. Imagine the empowerment that they would feel. Imagine how expansive their energy would be. This is how things happen so quickly. Like things can heal very quickly when we're in that elevated state. And I think about, even my own healing journey as well. Like if I had healed in the beginning, I would have been yelling at everybody, Nadine, you need to go on a raw food diet. You need to eat plant-based raw food diet. If I would have healed a few months later, I would have been like, you need to go on Tibetan herbal medication. In the next one, you need to go. So I think there's definitely divine timing, even in terms of my own
Yeah.
healing that I'm surrendering to and releasing because last week I had a massive breakdown and a massive breakthrough in terms of fear. And I realized I was afraid my whole life. I'd gone through lots of abuse as a young child as well. And I had this deep, deep rooted fear, a relationship with fear. And that served me for a long period of time because it kept me safe, but I don't need it anymore. So there was a lot of work that I needed to do to like help release that fear and really step into faith. And yeah, and I know I know I will be announcing, anyways, in divine timing when it's meant to happen, but I know I am already healed. I know I am. Just
Amazing.
waiting for it to physically manifest, and we'll see when that happens. But I think there's a reason why I haven't up until this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Um, I'm very conscious that we're pretty well close to the hour. I've got a couple more questions if you're okay to go over it. And like, there's a whole bunch of things that that I wrote down that we haven't covered. But that's okay. We'll save that for another day. But there's a couple. Oh gosh. I'm just going to try and pick the two.
Yeah,
Okay.
no
There's two things. So there's this, we've talked about the woo woo, and there's this, okay, you've talked about the fear, and I absolutely love that you have this trust in the process, and it's basically relearning, isn't it? Like learning how to use your intuition and that wisdom that your body holds, because we have been conditioned, for so many years to block all of that stuff out. Like it's not even a thing. If it's a thing, then it's woo woo, right? And
Yeah.
when it comes to healing cancer naturally, these two things that I want to ask you about are kind of interconnected. You get pushback from professionals, the doctor. You said you felt like it's like going into a battleground. You get people telling you that you're irresponsible, selfish. Who do you think
Wishing
you are? Right?
yeah. Yeah, go die
What about,
quietly.
yeah, what about your family? Like,
Mhm.
and and I've heard of other people who've gone on that natural healing journey, and have, at some stage, I've heard of one person, who, just someone in, within my sort of network, who tried to heal naturally, and didn't, and so he then went down the medical route.
Yeah.
But there's almost like a sort of pity. People talk about them like, oh, they think that they can do it naturally,
Yeah.
kind
Yeah.
of thing.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
How do you deal with all of that? Like,
Yeah. So, like, I'm, yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm a tough cookie. Been through a lot, played a lot of sports, things like that. So, I think I've developed thicker skin over the years. But in 2011, so when I left my career and started my career as a health and nutrition consultant and raw food chef and running retreats and coaching people, I mean, I came out as a cancer coach first. And then people are like, "You're gonna kill people," and I was like, "Nope." I was like, okay, yeah, I am not ready for this. I don't want to deal with this nonsense. And I just, helped people heal holistically. And then this time, after COVID, I was like, oh, F that. I am not here to play small. I feel very, very strongly. And I will say this quickly, just quickly, that I've studied in the last like 10 years, I've studied a lot of like near death experiences as well, like in people's stories, and people from all over the world, from all different religious backgrounds, from all different cultural backgrounds, have all said very similar things. And the things that they've always said is that they have this conversation, with God or whoever, they're speaking with, and they remember choosing their parents. They remember choosing, if they chose this, this couple, then, these challenges would come up, or this would help with their soul growth. If they chose this one, so I firmly believe, that myself, my higher self, God, knows what they're doing. And I feel very strongly that this was part of my path. So this time, after my father passed, and I was like I was raised by a single mom, but very close with my dad. So when he passed, and he was a huge support network for me as well. Like the grief is again, like grief that I've never felt before either. And where was I going with all of that?
your purpose and the near
Yeah,
death
so when the
experience.
lump came, it was like this calm like washed over me. And I was meditating just because I was trying to get this grief out. So I was meditating like minimum 2 hours like at a time, because I would go in listening to a guided meditation, usually Joe Dispenza's, because I love his, especially with headphones, because he plays with sound, which allows you to go deeper. And I remember bawling my eyes out. And I remember at some point hearing a male voice loud. It was not my dad, but a male voice loud inside my head. And I said, I was just like begging with God. And I was like, God, like, what else can I do? Like, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm doing this. And I was going through my list. And then loud inside my house in my head, I guess my house. And it said, "You are healed." Like loud, like a very authoritative voice. I'm not saying it was, I have no clue who it was. I don't know. It was a very loud voice. So when that happened, I like sat up in bed and I was like, what the F was that? Like, what was that. I'm like, okay. I'm like, whoever said that, thank you. Thank you. But I owned it. I owned it from the beginning. I've been studying, people healing. I was ready to use my voice then. And even sharing, I think what the scariest part for me was like, I'm not fully healed yet. And here I am helping people. And I felt like intuitively I got that message, like it's time to kind of come back out and it's time to get back to work. And I was like, you're crazy. Like I can't come out. I'm not perfect. I'm not healed. And they're
Mm,
like, do it messy, do it messy. And thank God I did because, again, like I've got somebody with lymphoma that's almost completely healed, somebody with skin cancer that's almost completely healed, somebody that had thyroid cancer, it's almost healed. Like, so it's crazy. Imagine I kept my mouth, shut. Imagine I stayed stuck in fear. Imagine I didn't break out and, raise up my frequencies so I could step into courage and then, experience that happiness and joy. So yeah, I mean, there were like some, people that would come up and be like, and get out of the medical system and just go home and die. And, some people did say nasty things, but I recognize that's their hurt and pain.
mm,
Has nothing to do with me. So I was able to completely separate that because I don't have that button. If I have that button, like if that fear comes and I'm feeling the fear, I'm like, today's not a good day. I didn't sleep well yesterday. I didn't eat well, like, and everyone's kind of upsetting me. And somebody came and said it on that day, I wouldn't even respond. I would be like, okay, let me cancel my plans. Let me go in and like shift my energy, line back up so
wow.
I'm feeling good again, and then come back out. But I'm not letting people, yeah, like scare me.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty like a really it's just such a shift in perspective, isn't it? Because we do have this kind of like uh, I'm sick, I'm gonna die mentality, right? If you're
Yes.
diagnosed with something like that, it's the end. Whereas
Yeah.
you're like, well, this is my opportunity to live, right?
Yes.
It's a
Yeah.
completely different perspective. It's like I'm gonna do all of the things that make me
Yeah.
feel amazing.
Yeah.
And, I guess, yeah, as I said, it's like that shift in perspective because for so many of us, it could be like, well, I mean, even just working in the fitness industry and you get someone to do, go for a walk. It's like it's
Yeah.
too hard, too busy, not enough
Yes.
time. Yeah.
Yes.
Like we're totally in that mentality of not giving those things to ourselves and not living our best lives or thinking
Yeah.
we're thinking all of the bad things are living our best lives,
Yeah.
watching telly
Yeah.
after work, drinking alcohol, whatever it is.
Yes.
And
All the
I'm
distraction,
guilty of doing, yeah, the distractions. I'm guilty of distracting
all of
myself.
all of
But
us.
yeah, so it's a real perspective shift, and it's like, yes, I have been diagnosed with disease in my body, but that's my that's a sign that I need to go deeper and also appreciate more of all of the things that are in my
Yeah.
life.
And we don't need to own the diagnosis. There's
Right.
a reason why the diagnosis is there. There's a reason why the label's there, the
Mm,
staging is there, like all of that, because it messes with your head.
right.
Like stage 3, stage 4, it's like, ah, no, but my cancer's worse. And then we have a competition. Whose disease is worse? Like, no, mine's worse. I understand that you healed that, but mine's worse. And it's like, no, if you understand healing, then healing it's healing. We're always in a state of healing. So if we can really own that and truly understand, that's where education comes in, really understand like the fever. I mean, even just a fever. I mean, when we have water out in the wild, we want to, boil it. So we're burning off and killing off all the bacteria or viruses or whatever that could be, lingering in that water. So even when our body has a fever, we've been programmed, oh, you have a fever, take a Tylenol, quick, take a
Mm,
Tylenol. That's going to stop the fever. Well, now I've stopped the healing process. The body's like, what are you doing? Right. Or if I have like, snot running out of my nose and I've got a head cold and I take Tylenol cold and flu, I'm stopping the toxins from coming out of my nose. It doesn't make sense. So if you can like trust your
mm,
body in those little moments with like head colds or sore throats and knowing that you have different healing options. And like I said, with my program, like, I don't just say like cancer. It's like if you have a sore throat, I have a whole like healing protocols with sore throats, digestive issues, pain, whatever. And I walk you through all of those holistically. So it's not just physical protocols, but getting to the root cause as well. But if you can practice that with like a head cold or a sore throat or tummy issues and lean into healing naturally and doing all the protocols,
mm.
then you start building up trust again. And then when you start trusting your body and it's like, okay, now I know who you are. I can trust you that you're going to do it, your job, but I don't have to grip the wheels so tight. I can truly let go and surrender, knowing that my body is doing exactly what it needs to do.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest thing. And you touched on that too, Nadine. Like there's a reason why school is supposed to start at 9 o'clock and we're supposed to be at our 9 to 5 job at the exact same time we're supposed to drop off the kids, like a lot of the systems were designed, to cause stress, to keep us in a low vibrational state. So, and we don't have to fight against the systems or even hate the systems. We can see what's working, what's not working. This isn't working for me. And where can I reclaim my power? But one of the biggest ways that we can reclaim our power is through health. It really is. And if you can learn how we get sick, how we can heal using a holistic approach, like you're good. And when you learn all of these things, especially all of your loved ones are going to naturally learn as well without even you physically saying anything, because you're operating at a higher frequency. When we're in a state of peace, we can affect up to 1,000 people with our energy. 1,000 people. When we're in a state of shame, the lowest vibrational, and like we're always like, oh, I did something wrong and I'm beating myself up. Like we all go into shame, I'm sure, multiple times, a week, never mind a day, but or a day, never mind a week. But with the shame, we can affect up to 20 people. So the high vibrational energy is so much more powerful and potent than that low vibrational energy. So if we can continuously, again, build up that trust with ourselves, because again, we've given our power away to all the systems and all of the experts. But if we can reclaim and start to rebuild that relationship with ourselves, we can rebuild that trust with ourselves. Like this is how we heal. This is how, and it's so much more than just getting rid of the lump or the pain or the digestive issues or any of that. It's really about making life your medicine, lighting up every area of your life. So you're excited to wake up, and hang out with whoever you're hanging out with.
Yeah, I love that. That's beautiful. And have you got time for just one more? That would be a beautiful way to close, because I think this is, one of the reasons I invited you on is because I do, as I said at the beginning, we have very similar values and beliefs around healing and, living our best lives through.
Turn this light on.
Oh yeah, it's gone dark there.
Dark, yeah.
I'll be quick.
Oh yeah, no worries, no worries. I'm just like melting in the dark here, and there we go, a little bit more light.
And I want this to, this podcast is about empowering people, like sharing the possibilities, sharing people's stories, raising the vibration of, with the people around us.
Yeah.
There's this whole thing about, shutting people down, shutting people like you down.
Cancel culture.
Cancel culture.
Yeah.
But not just from someone who's following you and then goes, oh, that's a load of bullshit, I'm not going to listen. But like you've had your Facebook group shut down. Have you been given like warnings from?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Like you're not even allowed to talk about it. What the hell is that?
Yeah,
I hope this doesn't get shut down. Or maybe it's a good sign. Maybe it's a good sign.
Well, yeah, I think so. Yeah, we'll delete that. We'll set the intention that you are safe and your channel is safe and getting that message out there. But I mean, yeah. This is so much more than just health, right? I mean, it really is. I mean, if we go down that rabbit hole, I mean, it really is a spiritual war. It is, right? So it's like a frequency thing. I mean, we can get like sucked into that or know that ultimately like we have the power. We have control of what we, what we need to do or what we, But like I said before, it really is. I mean, the longer that I go on this healing journey, I really feel like it is a return to love, like learning how to love ourselves, because we've been, again, even with schooling, right? It's like, I got 98 on my math test. Okay, so what were the 2 questions you got wrong? Oh yeah, they were circled in red. Like, oh shit, oh God, I'm a friggin' failure because I got these 2. And it's like, oh, you just got 98 right. You got 2 wrong. It's like, come on, go easy on yourself. But we've been kind of programmed to focus on what's wrong and what's not working. And then it's not us, it's just your genes, or it's not you, it's just bad luck, and it's like, well, if it's always just bad luck and something else, then what can I control? What can I control, right? So it's a very disempowering systems. But if we can learn again to connect with ourselves and really connect with ourselves, because, and this is where meditation is absolutely key, because when we meditate, again, we're very aware of our body, the sensations in our body, and then we can get like messages. And I remember when I did a 7 day water fast, that was tough, Nadine. That was the toughest thing I
I
think
can't
I've ever,
even begin to imagine.
while still cooking for my kids. Okay. Like it was next level. Although the 6th day, I was like, my husband came down and cooked a lemon loaf, and I was like, is this the day that we get divorced? Is this the day, God? He's like, I'm sorry, I just tried to, anyway, he was being an amazing dad and trying to make something for the kids from scratch and whatever. And I'm, oh, you need to go because I can't smell food right now. But what was beautiful during that period is that, when you're hungry and you're not really sleeping, and I had this like weird pain, like even on my hip bone. So my right away, the monkey brain, the programming comes in, and I'm like, oh, is this cancer? Is the cancer spreading? Like, what is this? And I was like, let me go meditate. So I was meditating for long periods of time, and I set the intention that I was going to get that answer. And then it was like, remember how you took chemo back in 2011? They put lots of heavy metals in your body. So we're pulling the heavy metals out of your bone. It's going to hurt for a little bit, but you're going to be okay, and just keep going. So, I mean, that was like a very clear message that I got, even during my meditation. But again, like I worked up to that and really like focus on connecting with me, like spending time alone, like walking in the woods, connecting with nature. And as I'm in there, like, I'm having conversations, in my mind with myself or with God or whatever it is, and clearing out and doing the spiritual work. But I mean, the more that you connect with yourselves, I mean, the more empowered you're going to be, the more that you can stand in your power and going, no, that's not right. That doesn't feel right. I'm not comfortable doing that. No, thank you. And I think that's where, 2020 and everything that happened was like one of the best things. And I lost a parent during that, during that time too. But I think that was one of the greatest gifts that was given to humanity, because it allowed us to wake up faster than we've ever
Yeah.
woken up before. And now people are asking better questions. It's like, if you want a better life, we have to ask better questions. And now people are asking more and more questions, and more truth is being exposed than ever before. We're seeing this in the celebrity world. We're seeing this in the music industry. We're seeing this in schools and in the medical community, and now in politics. It's like we're covering a lot of systems,
Yeah.
and a lot of truth is being thrown at us, left, right, and center right now. So there's a lot of collective grief right now, a lot of
Mm.
grief, because people are like, oh my God, like I thought I could trust this person, and I loved this person, and they're a bad guy. Oh my gosh. So a lot of grief is happening right now. So it's like individually what we're going through, and then we can also pick up collectively, what we're going through as well. But like I said, the only thing that we can control is us
Yeah.
and our frequency. So we want to make sure that we're changing our energy to one that feels good. And if you're like, what are you talking about energy? It's like, you feel good? Good. Keep feeling good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Let's just keep it simple.
Vibration. Yeah, vibration frequency is like, what are you talking about? Like, forget all that. Just feel good. Our number one job in life is to feel good.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you. This has been such an amazing conversation. I've loved all of it. And there was a whole bunch more, as is often the case with my podcast. I'm always like, oh, we've run over time. I appreciate that we've gone over time, and just want to thank you for your amazing work and for joining me today.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Truly. And yeah, I just love your energy. And it's been
Oh,
so much fun.
yeah,
So
it's been
thank
great.
you.
Thank you. Take care, won't you?
Okay.